Okay, welcome to the Vermont Legislative Tourism Caucus. It is Friday, April 9th, and today we are fortunate to have with us Adam Grinold from the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, Joan Goldstein, our Vermont Commissioner of Economic Development, and Darcy Carter from the Small Business Administration's Vermont office. And we're going to be talking about getting sort of a status update and information about the various economic recovery grants and loan programs that are out there and that are coming again as a result of the new money. So we're going to start with Adam Grinold. Adam has to leave early, so we want to start with him. So I'm going to kick it off to Adam. Thanks, Adam, for joining us.
Of course, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be here. So the State Agency of Commerce and Community Development typically handles the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grants, through a process where applicants will apply for funding. This is different in that it is specific to COVID. So coming out of Irene, BDCC, the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, worked in partnership with the state and other regional organizations to help implement the disaster recovery. So it's known as DR, CDBG DR. And through that process, we helped deliver funds to businesses recovering from flood impacts. So when COVID hit, the state knew that we had the experience along with Two Rivers Adequachi to help understand how to work within CDBG, because it has very strict guidelines through that program, probably the strictest, most strict dollars that can come to a business. So it is not easy.
Can I just interrupt real quick? Because some of the new members, well, and I still call them new members, it's April, but CDBG, for those of you who don't know, is the Community Development Block Grant Program. So
great. Yeah, and if I speak in acronyms, please, stop me. My apologies in advance. So, and those are HUD dollars that come to the state typically every year, and then our support economic development, housing, and other interests. And there's a very prescribed process to typically distribute those throughout the state with board approvals. This is different process. So ACCD worked with Two Rivers Adequachi and BDCC to first develop the round one, which went out last year. And in round one, it was competitive. There was a lot of applicants. It was designed to be a lottery in order to ensure that it was just, the demand was so much more than the available dollars in round one. And a little later on, I'll put in the chat a link to the report for round one so everyone can see the impact that had.
This is Adam, I'm sorry, this is round one of the sole proprietorship grant program, right?
Correct. CDBG did round one for disaster recovery specific to COVID last year. Those funds have been fully dispersed, I think as of just a month or so ago. And then round two began on April 5th on Monday and is now live. And again, I'll put in a link to the website. People can go on, click to this website, learn who is eligible. And the eligibility is really geared towards folks who are what is known as LMI, and that's low and moderate income. So to determine if you're eligible on this website, you can go in and do a drop down to where you live, so which county you're in. And then put in your household income. And this is important. It's not just your income, it's household. So if you had people living with you, even if you're not married, you don't file together, it is still considered household income. So in order to be eligible, this drop down will help determine quickly if you meet those criteria. If you meet those criteria, you proceed. And that's just self-understanding and self-select and understand if you're eligible. if you are eligible based on your LMI status, and you've earned at least $24,000 through your sole proprietor effort in the previous year, and it can go back even to the year before. You just have to establish that in general, prior to COVID, your sole proprietorship endeavors earned $24,000 or more. And the reason, and if you take the minimum wage, that's a minimum wage threshold. So the idea behind that was to ensure that this was really people's livelihood, not a sort of a side hustle that they just did part-time. So this is for folks who have businesses and dedicate their time to this business. So you meet the LMI, you've made at least $24,000, and here's the really important part, you can still demonstrate unmet need. Unmet need is that you have received an impact from COVID and you are still behind. You're not ahead of where you would be. So if you can do those things, you're going to be eligible. There's a lot more little nuance and detail to it, but that's really those initial filters in order to determine eligibility. The challenge in implementing the CDBG disaster recovery program for CV, for COVID, is that a lot of these sole proprietors don't have systems in place for as a business that's operating full-time or to a greater scale. So these folks often don't have QuickBooks. You ask for a profit and loss, it doesn't exist. So this is a very one-on-one kind of support program that we have to deliver. So this round is going to take, we're anticipating supporting folks through December. That long to get them through the whole process of being able to demonstrate their unmet need, provide proof of unmet need, and then there's an award given. So you can apply for between $1,500 and $10,000. And this is a grant. So you will apply. If you've qualified, you will be given an award. Then you have to work with your technical assistance provider to complete the application process, providing all the necessary support. Once you do that, you can get your award paid. So for folks who are in the sort of the early stage in application and come through first, and if they have all of their documentation ready, they can start getting those grants very quickly. Other folks, it's going to take months. The other piece is we only have so much technical assistance to provide. So even if you're ready and you have everything together and you applied later, you still have to wait for all those others in front of you to get the assistance before your turn comes up. So it can be an extended process. What we're doing is we're accepting applications and then they're all time stamped. And then after that timestamp expires or is noted, we're also understanding what the sort of demand is. So we're tracking where people are they looking for 1,500 or 10,000. So we're going to try to keeping our eye on the total available funds to ensure that we don't make people wait, give awards, make them wait when in fact there's no funds left. So applications will be available through May or once we determined the funds are fully allocated. I'll pause there for questions.
What is the total amount of appropriation for this? What is the total program?
So not an appropriation. It's federal dollars that are just coming through, but this is 1.7 million.
Okay. Sorry, Representative Kimball.
Yeah, Heidi. And I'm wondering, in terms of how you're determining unmet need, that's always a great question of how to do that. What's the process you're using for that?
Sure. So an applicant would provide proof of unmet need. So where do they still have bills that are greater than what their income allows them to pay? They can also use this as working capital going forward. So this doesn't have to be in arrears. This could be going forward. And again, if their income is lower than it has been in the past, that can qualify them as unmet need.
It's not necessarily a requirement, though. You don't have to show a decrease in revenue or net profit from the previous period, or is it just because? So if you have a wedding business that could set up a small photographer who wants to apply, didn't exist previously, but had all these contracts that suddenly get canceled, that might be enough of an indication of unmet need.
Yes, and there's a period of time, and I want to be accurate with that, so I'd want to look that up, when a business could form and still be eligible, but it does go back further than the start of COVID. So prior to March.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
You're muted, Heidi.
Sorry, Representative McCoy.
Thank you. Adam, can you give me the amounts of the grants that you said, between what and what the grants would be awarded? Did you give us that figure?
I did, yes. $1,500 up to $10,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Adam, first of all, I'd like to, if you could put those two links in the chat, that'll be great, because we'll want those. The website for it that has all the information of how and eligibility, and I'd be interested to see the report from the round one too. So
it's a great report. It's very visual,
okay.
and it really, you can drill down and see the impact. And the wonderful part with this is the ability to deliver to those small businesses who just really otherwise would not have received any assistance.
Can you tell me how it was dispersed around the state? Was it pretty?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're involved and you're down south and two rivers out of Quechee, but just curious as to how it was distributed around the state.
Sure. In this report, it's actually visual. So it's you'll see where everyone is, and you can hover over a dot, and that dot will bring up the information of the business. It'll, if they're a woman-owned, if they're minority-owned, if they're veteran-owned, what kind of business it was, what their grant was.
Okay.
It really is a telling story and portrait of the geographic distribution and the individual awardees.
Okay, great. So just to finish this, the applications will be available for Vermonters to apply until May, or until you've determined that the funds will be expended, that there won't be funds available for that particular applicant.
That's correct. And I should highlight that in round one, the city of Burlington was not eligible because of the HUD regulator, that they're their own MSA, and were a carve out for that. In this round, they are eligible. So we're seeing a strong pool of folks coming from that region, but it does in general continue to be fairly well distributed across the state. Okay,
great. So I think the bottom line is we want to get this information out to all of our constituents, make sure they know that this is available for those small one-person shops.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else for Adam? I'm sure he's going to stick around for a little bit, but I know he has to leave. I think, Joan, Commissioner Goldstein, I think we'll turn to you right now. Talk
Great.
about all the ones coming from ACCD.
Great, thanks Representative Sherman. Adam, I don't know if you said it because I had to step away for a moment, but on the CDBG grants, the applicants have to show that they're at 80% of area median income or less, right? Okay, because we just had one of the constituents reached out and could not qualify for that. So All right, where should I begin? I mean, I could talk a little bit and talk everyone through the results of the first and second rounds of economic recovery grants, if that would be helpful. I do have a report I could share screen. Do you want me to, can I do that here?
Yep, you should be able to do that. And yeah, I think we would be interested in a very brief sort of an summary of how the first two rounds went, but really trying to get into what our what we need to share with our constituents for new stuff available.
All right, so I'll be brief on kind of the past, right? But as we know, we did 2 rounds of grant applications for economic recovery grants. And as we know, we had first was a calculation based on 2019 revenue. The second was really based on unmet need, which was really revenue impact less the help that everyone received before. And the way it turned out is, you'll see what I have up on the screen is kind of the sector breakdown. So 25% of the recipient organizations were food and accommodation businesses. They had the greatest unmet need. As we measured, it was 257 million. And again, that was unmet need from March through September of last year, less the help that they received from PPP or EIDL. But it represented 42% of the proceeds. So there has been some chatter about how we were not necessarily targeted. I think this shows that really it went mainly to the people who needed it most. The other data point here on the next slide is just about the size of business. And we did predominantly help small businesses. 86% of the recipients had revenues of 1.5 million or less in 2019. And 53% of the recipients had 4 or less employees. So it really did skew toward the smaller employer. And that is really, the object of the game was to keep people kind of in the economy and prevent massive closures and shutdowns and bankruptcies. But having said all of that, we still know there was tremendous unmet need. So one of our shots here, again, the unmet need was measured only in the round 2. And so, in aggregation of all the unmet need, it looked like there was still like $500 million worth of unmet need. So we do know that since we did the second round of economic recovery grants, we had another round of PPP and EIDL, and I'm sure Darcy could talk more about that. But as we know, about $400 million or so dollars has been applied for in that next round of PPP. So it brings us to today, which is actually since January, we had been pitching for what we called gap recovery funds, and it's now called bridge funding in H315. And the appropriation in H315, I believe, is $10 million. And the idea there was to help people who, despite our best efforts in version 1 and 2, there were people that were left out. There were new businesses that didn't meet our guidelines, nor did they meet the guidelines of the federal help. So the most important priority is to get help to people who didn't get any help at all. And that's what is in the statute, well, in the bill as it passed. So what we will do is the first 30 days, whenever we launch, we're working feverishly to figure out how we can get this up and running, to pay those who didn't receive anything. And then after the first 30 days, we will pay others that did receive help before, but can prove that they still have a loss. Now, the way that this bill was written and the way that we've worked it through with the committees of jurisdiction is that we would be looking at net loss. There was a lot of critique that we based our awards the first and second time around on revenue. This time around, it's going to be based on their net income as reported in the 2020 tax returns. So the most important thing for your constituents would be make sure they file their 2020 taxes. When we're going to look at that and see if they had a loss, they're eligible. If they had a loss but they received prior help, we are going to add back in the non-taxable help. So what that means is if they had PPP loans forgiven in 2020, that is going to be added back. if they had forgiven loans in 2021, as we know, as H315 has now made the forgiven PPPs in 2021 taxable, we are not adding that back in. It's now deemed taxable by the Vermont bill. Well, it's not signed yet, but so anyway, that is kind of the rough outline of how we think we're going to execute on this. And as we know, the governor unveiled his ARPA proposal, and the proposal is to fund the what we're calling the bridge funding with $50 million instead of the 10. I could stop there with questions, or I can go into what the other parts of the proposal are. What's your pleasure?
So, Joan, can you just describe, say that again? I didn't quite, in 315, it's $10 million, but then you just said that the governor, it might be 50 million?
I'll explain it. H315 has been worked on since January. And at the time, we didn't have ARPA and, we didn't have these things, and we knew we had to get help. So as it has evolved and through the legislative process, the funding source for the funds was ARPA. Well, we didn't get ARPA money yet. And so even though there's 10 million that's been kind of appropriated in that bill, there's an acknowledgement that we don't have the money yet. Concurrent with all of this happening is ARPA passes. We've put forward the administration's platform on how we want to spend it, and the portion for economic recovery grants is $50 million. So as of this moment, we don't have 50 million to spend, but we don't have 10 million. It's just that in H315, that's what was appropriated, was 10 million, but from ARPA. So the long and short of it is we cannot really spend any money until we obviously have it. But in the interim, once it becomes law, we could launch the program and at least start the process of collecting, information from folks, applicants, get a good feeling about how much demand there is, how much remaining need there is, and start that process, because it will be a process. And we expect that there will be quite a lot of applicants, even though we're basing it on net profit this time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tricky for sure. I mean, originally we proposed this in January as $10 million in general fund because we weren't aware of ARPA at this point, but we knew we needed to help. Along the way, the funding source was changed to ARPA.
Okay.
This is where we are.
So before I go to the hands, can you send that the presentation that you have to me, and I'll get it out, because I think this is I'd like to both understand that and go through that. And
that would be great.
I'm gonna you might be able to
I was just gonna send it right to you. What, you're seeing this right now?
Yeah, I'm seeing this. I didn't know you could do that. If you could maybe now undo the share screen, then we can all be on here. And we have a question from Representative Harrison.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Is it the administration's desire at this point to request to the Senate, because they have the budget, another 40 million of ARPA funds for to tie into the business development, the business economic recovery grants? Or are you proposing new legislation to do that at this point?
Yeah, I think we would, it's really an Adam question, but I think it is an amendment on the budget, I think it's an amendment on the budget. So yeah, in other words, we don't want to create yet another program, but instead fully fund this as per the proposal, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And just as a clarification, I think in the 315, there is language in there allowing the Commissioner of Finance to expend funds in anticipation of receipts from the federal government. So I don't think, or at least my understanding was, using the ARPA funds for that $10 million program should not delay it with that language, hopefully. So, thank you.
Hopefully. I mean, and just so everyone knows, and I'm sure everyone knows this already, but it's like, it is kind of difficult doing all this and making these plans without actually having the full guidance from Treasury. So it is what it is. And I think that all of us are doing the best that we can to work under that type of scenario, which is a very dynamic scenario. And we did kind of the similar thing last year, but yeah.
So that actually leads to my question, Joan. We don't have the guy. One of the differences between this and the last two rounds you talked about is that instead of looking at revenues, you're looking at net loss. So you're looking at so people really need to file their 2020 taxes to do that. But what are the other differences? Like what are the other differences that we should be looking for that you anticipate, or if there was certain things in the bill that in the law that passed, the ARPA funding that passed, that's different from what the previous rounds were?
Yeah, I mean, so I should say, and sorry that I didn't give this detail, but so much is happening. But on the H315, the way that we're going to calculate the award is, first we have to see that there's a loss, right? Then we add back in anything that's not been taxable. And if they still have a loss, they're eligible. And then what we're going to do is take their fixed expenses, and that could either be looking back or looking forward, same as what Adam had indicated. Look at their fixed expenses like mortgages, rent, utilities, all these things that have to be paid, irrespective of whether or not they're earning revenue. And we're going to pay 3 times the monthly fixed expenses. So again, the construct was about how, all right, maybe we're all going to be open by July. However, to get people through to that point, to get them open, there may be fixed expenses that they either were not able to pay or in the foreseeable future would have difficulty just because they're either starting back up or rehiring or what have you. So that's the first thing. In terms of what's different about ARPA versus CRF, many, but the biggest thing that we all know about is that the time frame is not as condensed. So we have until December 2024 to spend down the funds, or actually to obligate it. I'd have to look at that technically, but so it's a little bit longer time frame, which is a blessing. But as we know, this is more what we're terming acute need. In the governor's proposal for spend of ARPA funds, we're proposing 50 million for this purpose, and then 90 million for capital investments. So the idea would be, with this once in a lifetime opportunity and funding, shouldn't we be making investments in long-term improvements to the economy? And that is a kind of a first in a lifetime, the first that we've ever been able to do that. And we all know about projects that heretofore can't get funded because there isn't a likely funding stream for them. And that's the idea behind capital investments, either in a community or a business or outdoor rec. A big chunk of that will go to A&R to help with, we're loved for our outdoor rec, but we don't necessarily accommodate it that well. If anybody tried to go to a head of a trail or something, if there's lack of adequate parking or facilities. So there's movement to make those improvements, and this money will help that. Yeah. We also know of projects all around the state that either linger, they're waiting for additional grant rounds from the feds or whomever, and it's
okay. So Joan, before I get to Darcy, and I do want to get to Darcy in just a second, but so what is the message right now to our communities, our businesses, and specifically, obviously, this is the Tourism Caucus, so our hospitality industry. What is the message right now? It's just be patient, get your taxes done? The thing's going to be coming up soon, or?
Yeah, I mean, we hope we have to improve on the system, so nothing like that is immediate, but we're hoping to be able to do something in the next month. They should definitely file their taxes. It'll be impossible for them to get this funding. Having said all that, the SBA has tremendous programs coming out. The shuttered venues opened yesterday. The restaurant stabilization is going to be an extremely generous package. They should all apply for that. So that's our first advice: is take advantage of every federal program you possibly could.
Okay.
And PPP is still in existence until May 31st. These are all great programs.
Okay.
For the state, they should apply for it as well. But to just bear in mind that we don't want to duplicate anything that the feds have done, and we'll take that into consideration, and we'll make sure that that's disclosed in all of the grant applications, et cetera. But they should really get as much help as possible to get that going. That would be my advice to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We do have 2 questions. We're going to do these quickly. Representative Austin.
Yes, thank you. One of the concerns I have is access to these funds for our constituents. And I think tech support, is going to be really critical, and clear explanations. And I'm wondering if the instructions on the website to apply for these funds are very clear and understandable and user-friendly, and if there's any additional tech support that our constituents can access, to apply for these funds.
Yeah, that's a great point and a great question. So we are working on first making sure what the mechanics are. Then we have to publish guidelines, and we will publish them on the site. We will also do webinars, and we will also do outreach with all the technical assistance network, right? The SBDC, the Center for Women Enterprise, and a number of others. And we've been on calls already talking about it. Again, we don't have it all etched in stone just yet, but we will do our utmost. I know last time there was critique about it. I just feel like there's never enough time. We launched last time, I think in 2 weeks or something from the passage. So I understand about the access. I think in H315, there's an expectation that we will provide technical assistance. It's unusual that the grantor provides the technical assistance. So I think really what we will do is work with the network of all the providers that are out there to ensure that they help their constituents. And again, the pre-work is even more important than the actual application, like getting the taxes filed, understanding what their business financials are, all of that pre-work is really critical.
And is that laid out somewhere, that pre-work, that what people should be starting to do now?
Not yet. I mean, we've been just pushing to get this going, and now we're working on the actual, what could we produce? And then once we articulate it, then we'll have to put it out there. So
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Representative Peterson.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if you had given during the presentation here a minimum and maximum amount per award.
Oh yeah, sorry. I should say that. Yeah. So for this new round, the maximum award will be $150,000, and that's in the bill. That's not left to our discretion. And last time around, I believe the maximum was $300,000 from all state sources. So we had to add up what somebody received before and get that, into the calculation. There is no minimum, actually.
Okay.
There is no minimum. I mean, there are some really small businesses, and I think last time we had a minimum annual revenue of $22,000, but there were still people that got left out. So we really don't want to leave people out, even though it takes as much work to review an application for $10 as it does for $10,000. It is what it is. I mean, we're not going to institute that.
Okay. And another question that maybe some of you legislators could help me with. We've heard 2 grant programs here. What's the difference between them? I think Jones is federal, but I didn't hear about the other one, the one Adam presented.
I know, and it's sorry, it did cause confusion like the first time around. I think it's causing confusion this time around. So a couple of things. They're both federal sources, just that so in ours, the one that's going to launch soon, it's based on ARPA funds, right? The American Rescue Plan Fund Act. And the one that Adam spoke about is through the Community Development Block Grant Program. They have a disaster recovery type of funding source, but they have to serve only low to moderate income individuals. You have to fall within the 80% or below, and it's only for sole proprietors, whereas ours is open to really everybody.
Everybody. Okay.
That's the key, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah.
Is that
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay, Darcy, I'm sorry. Well, we've still got plenty of time, so that's great. Darcy, if you can just jump in here, Joan kind of handed it off to you too, so that was good.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sure, and I'm kind of not sure what all you want to hear. I can do something very quick or a little bit more meaty. As everyone knows, there's a lot of federal programs that have come out since the CARES Act and then the Economic Aid Act and then ARPA. So we've got our Paycheck Protection Program, first draw and second draw. That is still active through May 31st. However, the money will not last that long. So anybody interested should definitely get right over to their lender and apply. Probably it won't last through April unless it's refunded. And I don't know that there's any groundswell to do that. So, but those are still available. That again is mostly for payroll. That's the focus of it, to keep your people on payroll and to pay for some additional related expenses of the business, which did get expanded in the Economic Aid Act. So it includes not just, your mortgage interest or your rent and your utilities. It's expanded to include supplier costs and some operating costs, personal protective equipment, if you need to do, filtration systems, anything like that. So it's a broader use, but still 60% has to be for payroll and payroll related eligible expenses. The first PPP loan can go up to 10 million. The second can go up to 2 million. The first one, 500 or fewer employees. The second one, 300 or fewer. That's not usually an issue in Vermont. But the second draw, you have to have shown a 25% reduction in your revenue from 2019 to 2020 in one quarter. So that has hung up a few of the applicants. They haven't met that criteria. But still, it's been very popular. So since January 11th, when it launched, it had ended in August of 2020. So then it came back again in 2021. We've done 7,537 loans for 508 million. And about 17% of that on the national level has gone to accommodation and food. We don't have a Vermont breakdown for that, unfortunately. Retail is about 5% nationally. Arts, entertainment, recreation is about 3%. So that's a pretty good chunk of money that's gone out in just a very short time in Vermont under PPP.
So can you, so that's 508 million that's gone to those 7,537 small businesses in Vermont, basically.
Correct.
Since January.
Since January 11th through April 5th.
Wow.
Yeah. That compares to last round in 2020, we did 1.2 billion for 12,401 businesses.
Wow. So you said it's still active and available technically until the end of May, but most likely it's going to be
used up.
Yeah, and most likely in April it will be when. So we need to get people. Okay, all right.
And people seem to be pretty aware of that. Okay. It's been pretty widely communicated.
Okay.
Was there a question? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anyone. Okay.
No, that was me.
The next program, also I did want to mention the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. It's kind of a companion loan. That's for working capital for an economic injury. And that one, the latest information we have through January was 6,420 loans for 353,191,000. So that those two together is the total impact of the primary programs for the pandemic. The EIDL loan is still open and available through December 31st. In addition to that, anyone who had an EIDL loan, and they were quite popular, is now eligible to apply for an increase. Those loans had been capped at 150,000, which was not sufficient for a great many of the applicants. It can now go up to 500,000, and every EIDL loan borrower has been notified by SBA of this opportunity and the instructions on how to apply, and that happened just this week. So there's a lot of interest in that. These are low interest loans over a very long term, and so the payment is much more affordable. It's still a loan, but in the absence of, being able to get some of the more narrowly specified grant money, it's widely available. Nonprofits, for-profit, wide eligibility farmers.
Great. What did you say was open and available through?
December 31st of 2021. And the funding is adequate in that program.
We have a question, Darcy. Representative Page?
Yes, I have a business owner in my district who is a permanent resident. They're a green card owner, green card holder. Do all these programs that you're talking about, are they open to these individuals?
Yes,
if they,
yes, they are. If they're here with a green card, permanent resident alien, I think is one of the terms. Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So the other programs out there, I know your time is kind of limited here. There's the targeted EIDL advance, which is, this is the famous advance that was supposed to be 10,000 and everyone basically got less than 10,000. So it's trying to put the apples back in the cart and give people the rest of it. But the catch is you have to be in a low income community. And kind of like Adam was talking about, we do have a website where you go in and you find out, am I in this low income community? And was I shorted on my EIDL advance? And SBA again has notified those people directly. So you don't need to go poking around trying to figure out how to apply. You will be notified of the opportunity, and that has already happened. The other thing we're doing is we've been making principal and interest payments on SBA loans for everybody, and that has continued. Currently under the new funding, we're doing 3 months on new loans, and except in certain groups, they're getting 5 months of payments as long as the money's there. Also, the EIDL loans have been given a 24-month deferment on all payment from the date of the note. So that's giving more time, recognizing the longer effects of this pandemic. On our regular programs, all the fees are waived. The guarantee is up to 90%, which is encouraging lenders to look at non-COVID funding. Sorry about my dog. And the other two programs right now, sorry, my husband's supposed to take her outside. The Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program, and this is, we've been working with Arts Council and Humanities Council on that. And there's only about 16 billion in this program. It is very targeted. So it is for movie theaters, it's for museums, it's for performing arts organizations, theatrical producers, and and talent representatives. So it's very targeted. It's not for agricultural fairs. It's not for sporting events. A lot of folks were hopeful that they would be eligible. And as more and more information has come out, it's very clear this was developed by Congress with the industry for all the shuttered, stages. And that's its primary focus. And then kind of along the way, museums got added in, which is great because we've got some awesome ones here. And there's been a lot of information on the website. There's video tutorials, there's a program guide, FAQs that are like 60 pages long. And this launched yesterday, but there was technical problem, as with all new technical launches. So no one was actually able to apply yesterday. because this program requires a lot of documentation because it's a grant, up to $10 million under the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant that you can get. It's based on 45% of your gross earned revenue. And if you get one, they do deduct any PPP loans that you've received. So we're looking at, organizations like West End Playhouse or Flynn Theater, or I'm trying to think of some of the museums, things like that. But it's also open to smaller, entities, including nonprofits, including state or government-run operations that are eligible. So it is a wide group that's eligible.
So, Darcy, sorry, can I interrupt? So this is called the Shuttered Venue Operator
Grant. Yeah.
And this is, if we go to your website, the SBA website, it'll have it on there, and it was just launched yesterday?
Right, SVO, it's sba.gov/SVO grant. And there's a landing page in the portal. There's so much information on there. In addition, because it's a grant and our district office can't directly help people because it's a conflict of interest, our Small Business Development Center and the Center for Women in Enterprise are doing the one-on-one assistance. So they've been very busy helping people.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have some folks benefiting significantly from that. There's a really broad use of that money, and they have over a year to use it, which is much longer than the PPP. It can also be used for payroll. It's very, very flexible in terms of what you use it for. There's priority periods too on that one. For the first 14 days, it would be those venues that have lost 90% of their revenue. And then after 14 days, 70%. After that, 25%, and it's open to, it has to at least be 25% reduction in revenue to be eligible. But, most of them have been shuttered for the whole year, so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so again, we're really hopeful some Vermont entities will get through that, and hopefully we'll get it open again. We're going to have advance notice of it when it opens, because the funding is, it's $16 billion. It's not going to last. This is a national program. You have very large theaters and Broadway. There's a lot of interest, and so I don't know that it would get refunded. So people have been pretty anxious and got very organized and prepared, and then they weren't able to actually submit an application yesterday. So you may hear disappointment, but the agency is very mindful. This is first come, first serve. So that's why they shut it down, so that they can just do a restart where nobody's had anything, no one lost their place in line. So anyway, sorry about that technical thing. The last thing is, and Commissioner Goldstein mentioned the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. This is going to be a hot program for Vermont. Let me just kind of tell you who's eligible. And again, it is restaurants, so it's not accommodations. Unfortunately, it's really, again, one of these industry working with Congress to say, we need this. And so it is really tailored, but it's restaurants, food stands, food trucks, food cart, caterer, saloon, inn, tavern, bar, lounge, brew pub, tap room, tasting room. So if you think of all the breweries, and even like a bakery, if they have a big enough retail operation as part of that. So it's not for wholesale, it's for, really that retail level of food related business. And this one, you can get up to $10 million, $5 million per location. It's a grant. The way it's determined is you take 2019 revenues, subtract 2020, and then you have to subtract any PPP loans that you got for that. So that's how it's basic. It's not even half of your loss, it's your whole loss is what your grant amount would be minus the PPP loans. So if you think about that, it's pretty generous. You've got a longer period to use the money, very flexible use of the money, and also people who just opened in 2020 are going to be eligible. So even though they couldn't really open and they expended money getting their restaurant ready, they would be eligible to have their expenses covered under this program. So It's under development. The agency's working incredibly hard to get it out by mid-April, sorry. And there's going to be, it's not going to be as structured as the SVOG grant, the shuttered venue one. It's not going to be, you don't have to register in sam.gov. It's a different type of program, but I'd be happy to come back when it's open because we want everybody to know about this. And this is definitely helpful for minority-owned businesses, you know, sole proprietors, you know, private chefs. You know, so it's pretty wide open. So I think we should really make sure everybody is really clear on it. Again, the money will go, but there's talk that it would get refunded again. So this one has more potential overall for the state.
So at this point, it's still in development. So there's not like a website yet, but you're willing to come back once it's okay.
Yeah, would like to, just because this one was really, yeah, I really see Vermont taking advantage of it.
Okay.
And I think they're working hard just based on the text of the bill. It was basically like, don't make this hard, SBA, you know,
Good.
because of the kinds of, I mean, you think of people like returning citizens, right? Trying to start a new life after they get out of incarceration. And there's a lot of programs across the country to help them, like with coffee carts and things like that, really small enterprises. And so, you know, we want to make sure those people are aware just as much as, you know, someone with 20 locations or something.
Okay, great. We've got a few questions. Representative Peterson.
Yes, thank you. Darcy, at the beginning of your program presentation, you talked about payroll items, and I think you talked about mortgage, rent. Anything for landlords?
The landlords are separately eligible for PPP, their business. So yes, they can apply. And again, though, it's the payroll expenses, but the owner gets compensated. So if they're self-employed landlord, the PPP would be used to pay their own compensation. There's kind of a cap on that, $20,833. It's the monthly, you take your average monthly payroll and you multiply it by 2.5, and that's your PPP loan amount, unless for the second draw in your restaurant, you can get 3.5 times your average monthly payroll.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be, Heidi?
I'm sorry. Yes?
Heidi, it's Mary. I just on that piece with the landlord, I didn't mean to interrupt. Could a link be sent to you to share with the rest of us? I've got several landlords with this issue, but they didn't know what link to go to.
I'll send out the links of various things. I think landlords are a little different in a lot of ways because for a PPP, they would have to be on a payroll. I think they'd have to be so a PPP is a payroll thing. So I think if they're a sole proprietorship, it might be the sole proprietorship kind of grant that they would want, or the other economic recovery grants. But I'll send out links regardless.
Thank you.
Representative Kimball.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Darcy, I'm just wondering, in the restaurants, that's an amazing program. Do you have to take into account any kind of state administered economic recovery grants, or are those not even considered?
You're gonna find that out in about 2 weeks.
Okay, all right, thanks.
The answer, but I can't tell you.
Okay.
So.
Representative Dolan.
Thank you. Just a quick question, a clarification. For those businesses that have restaurants, but they also have an inn, will they be able to access those funds for their restaurant side of their business?
Thank you for the question. What's going to come out in our policy will be how they can determine that, and it'll probably be based on, you know, a percentage of their overall revenues. So that will be coming out. That's why I'd love to come back when I can tell you definitively.
We're definitely going to have you back once we have this thing. We'll definitely get you back right away so that we can get this information out to our folks once it's released. Representative Hango.
Yes, thank you. For my colleagues who are interested in landlord assistance, I have all kinds of great things to tell you. So I can, if you just reach out to me, I can get you a link to the new program that's opened up for landlords and tenants to apply, and the money goes directly to the landlord, and it is for rental assistance and for utility assistance. So I think that might be what maybe Rep. Morrissey and Peterson were really trying to get at. So thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Representative Kalaki. Oh, you're muted. John, you're muted.
Thank you. Darcy, I thank you so much to talk about the Shuttered Venues Grant program. I see on the website it says it's been closed down, as you mentioned, but it doesn't say when you expect it to open up. Do you have any?
We got an email this morning to all employees saying that, they're working, incredibly hard to get it launched again, and they want to make sure there's advance notice in fairness to all. It uses the Salesforce platform, which one would think could accommodate this. They did a lot of testing on the system, so believe me, they are more disappointed than anybody else after all their hard work to get this program developed. So I would think within a day or so at the most. Yeah,
that's good to know. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep my eye on it. I'll have it open I'll refresh it every once in a while. And if Darcy hears, maybe Darcy can just drop me an email or something.
Absolutely. Definitely. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I'm sorry for that hiccup. But I think our folks in Vermont have really been paying attention to how to get ready for that grant. It's quite involved. And they've been working hard on that. And I have to echo Commissioner Goldstein's recommendation to file your 2020 taxes, especially for the restaurant grant. I think that would be very important for them to have done that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, this was full of information, which is great. And I might reach out to you guys for a few things, but I've got a lot of links now up on my computer. And Joan, if you haven't already, if you could send me that presentation you had, and I'll get all of this information out to folks. I think we just need to do all we can as representatives to get this information out to our constituents and our regions to make sure everybody is aware of all of these opportunities for them. So thank you all. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just sent it, Heidi. So if you could confirm, one of them got bounced. So
I'll do
just
that.
let me know. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all again. And I'll be in touch with an email with all sorts of information. Thanks.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.